Okay, so first of all, a big warm welcome to Sophie, who's our guest today. Sophie's going to be sharing her journey with us as a competitor, but also we're going to be looking at her aspirations of going from the bikini category up to figure. So a really awesome chance for Steff and I to share our own experience with you guys, but also delving into learning a bit more about the different categories available to female competitors. Lots to talk about. How are you doing, girls?
Really good.
Really good, thank you. Yeah, all good.
Steff, what can we expect from you today? Lots of advice about posing and categories and what the judges are looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to delve into that side of things and kind of give a bit of an overview of what's to be expected from a bikini competitor. And then as Sophie kind of talks to us about her transition to the figure division, what that looks like and how that affects your posing as well. And there's lots of things within that. So yeah, I'll be delving into that today.
Cool. So I guess the best place to start is, how did you get into competing in the first place, Soph? And what have you done so far? So talk us through your first season and how that went and where you're heading.
Yeah, so I got into it really when I met my partner. He has already been doing a bit of bodybuilding in the past, and he said, you'd be really good at it. And I was like, I could never do anything like that. And I always used to admire this girl that was in my first gym that I ever went to. At the time, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. And I kind of wanted to do bodybuilding, and I totally looked up to her and what she was doing. And she was getting ready for a competition, and it was really tough for her. And I was just like, oh my God, like I could never do that. And then I met him, and he was like, you know what, you'd be really good at it. And I was like, are you sure? So we had literally had the shortest off season ever. I mean, I've been training for a while, but with bad eating habits and all sorts of different things, it's never been ever been structured, and my food's never been good enough to be able to build anything substantial. So he was like, right, okay, we'll sort out your food, we'll sort out your training. And then within 6 months I'd started prep. So I had a really, really short off season, so I trained really hard and tried to put on as much as I possibly could in that short amount of time, and then started getting ready for the show. And that's when I met lovely Sarah. So we met, I think, at a posing little thing that they did that was like associated with the show that we were both doing. Briefly we met there, and then I think we started talking about the makeup artist, and that's what started things off. And then she was really my rock throughout the whole day, because I was absolutely terrified of mostly falling over on the stage, of there was going to be thousands of people there, well, not thousands, but quite a few hundred people there, and that I knew loads of people that were coming to watch, and I'd never ever done anything like that ever. So she kind of held my hand, and luckily we were number 17 and 18, so we got to pretty much stay together the entire time when we were on the stage. So that was amazing. And I went into the show with absolutely no expectations whatsoever. I just wanted to be able to say, I've been through this experience, I've managed to get on stage. That was something that I never thought I could ever do, and I've done it, and that's a box ticked. Like, no expectations of getting a placing or anything, especially when the lineup started to come out and there was loads of girls. The category was massive. Did not expect it whatsoever. So to rock away with third place was insane, like literally insane. Yeah, and then it sort of just blossomed from there, really. So then me and Sarah kind of became best friends, and we've been supporting each other through our little journey. And I was planning on competing last year, but with all the lockdowns and everything, it was so up and down with all the shows and stuff that it just kind of became, you know what, we'll just take this year off and just focus on trying to build with what we can, and then go from there, really. So
Yeah, everyone can relate to that as well. Like Steff and I did our sort of COVID-19 coping strategies talk, because it's, as competitors, it's just such an uncertain time. And Steff working with people as a coach as well, I can imagine you're getting so many people that are just like, I don't know what to do. Do you start a prep and hope that there's a show, or what do you do if there's no show? Like, as we've said before, getting stage lean, it's not an easy thing to do. So then if, you know, you're heading for that date and then it's like, I heard of shows last year being postponed for like 2 months. And it's like, if you found that out a week before your show, I mean, I don't know if you had any experience with competitors having that, Steff.
Yeah, I mean, I had quite a large team come through for the shows last year, and of course, it's near on a year now that we've been in this predicament. And so for the majority of them, we had, for some of them, 3 or 4 date moves. For one of them, she was a week out, and then her poor daughter got COVID, and we had to completely change her plans very quickly because she could no longer do that show.
Yeah.
90% of my guys managed to come through with managing with a lot more support. I'd say that my coaching style kind of had to change quite dramatically from not just being the coach who's kind of giving the performance for the training aspect and the actual getting you to stage contest prep aspect, but actually the mentoring side of it, the support, the emotional support that they needed during that time. And so for me, similar to some of the things we said on the coping strategies podcast, the one before, was managing expectations and giving them the understanding that although the stage date may move, more time in our world in bodybuilding is a good thing for a start, because more time you get better shape. But also looking at it as a challenge, not just physically. You know, bodybuilding is a challenge that you physically put yourself through and you decide to do that. But if something crops up externally that then throws a spoke in the works, and I talk to my clients about this all the time, you've got to be prepared for that, because it could be anything. It doesn't just have to, it's obviously we've got a very severe one right now, which has put us all into a crazy place, but it could be anything. Like it could be that, I don't know, for some reason or another, you've maybe hurt yourself through a training injury, but you have to manage it somehow, and you have to get your head around the fact that you might not be as optimal in your training because of that, for example. And there's so many different things that could happen during a prep that you've got to expect. It might not just be plain sailing. So a lot of it was really about managing expectations, saying you still can, despite the fact that dates have moved. And there was so much more in that, which I could go on about forever, but I won't bore you right now. Hopefully that's a little bit just now on that.
And it's like what Sophie said, like, and you've just said, she's capitalized on this time to then, rather than go from, so we competed at Rhinos in November 2019.
Yeah.
And then if she had competed last year, if we didn't have lockdown and stuff, then potentially maybe an off season, so a phase where she's trying to gain muscle, maybe that would have been 6 months. Then she might have competed in bikini again, but deep down she wants figure. And to now be able to utilize potentially like an 18-month off season, I mean, you yourself can appreciate that because you've come through the ranks of figure, is, a massive silver lining to all of what's happened last year. So for Sophie to come through from bikini to figure is, ideal.
Yeah, the time is so beneficial for you to grow. It's interesting we're talking about this, because I was chatting away to one of my figure clients this morning about how, because she came to me not wanting to prep for figure, wanting to build, and she had been one of these competitors that had competed for a few years back to back, but is just not seeing that progression in the rate of her physique. For us girls to build solid muscle, you need that time away from the stage to really focus on creating the look for the figure division. And that's where it kind of changes from the bikini division to the figure division. You're focusing on that sort of tighter defined look, you're focusing on a V taper, you're focusing on creating dimension to the shape, and the posing isn't as you're not using the posing as much to twist and contort your physique. You're having to kind of stand straight on or straight facing the back and say, here I am, here's my dimensions. So you're not able to do as much of the flexing of the kind of neatening up the waist and twisting as much. So you have to do that work in the gym to get those dimensions straight on.
Isn't it? People that haven't competed before and they're looking at it, it might be that, it's either you think it's bikini or women's bodybuilding, but actually there's figure in between, and so much more now. Like, it's unbelievable how many categories. I mean, some shows go on to 11, 12 o'clock at night, and they start at 10 in the morning, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I kind of go like, if you're looking at a spectrum of female classes, you've got bikini, which has got a myriad of classes, short, tall, all these different exactly, right? And you've got the more new division, which came in the 2019 sort of NPC IFBB side of things, the wellness division, which is like a hybrid between bikini coming into figure with a thicker look, a more kind of muscular look, but then you're contorting still in the bikini shapes, if you know what I mean. And then you've got figure, and potentially could argue you've also got fitness before figure, because fitness is there for the girl who's more athletic and shapely, but then can do all of the crazy more athletic stunts with it, if you're looking at, again, IFBB level. Then into figure, then into women's physique, that's another division, and then bodybuilding. So you've got like this huge spectrum of female looks that I think, until you kind of get further into it, you don't realize are there. So yeah.
So Sophie, what's your main reason for going to figure? Is it just that you've seen people compete in figure and you think, I really want to do that? Or is there other motivations?
Yeah, I've always loved the figure look. Like,
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. It's kind of like on stage, like, here I am, here's what I've built, but it's still really feminine at the same time. Whereas when you start moving up to sort of physique level, that's when it starts becoming, you're much bigger and you are sort of on the edge of getting towards that like bodybuilder stage. Whereas figures like a really nice in between of, it's not bikini and as petite, because I think with bikini as well, you have to have a certain kind of body shape. Like, they do like kind of like the like elegant long kind of limbs, which obviously you can create with your posing, but they really love that within bikini. And then, but if you naturally aren't like that, that's when you can kind of slot into the other ones. Even if it's wellness, like the wellness girls have incredible legs, like incredible legs, but then at the same time they can get away with kind of the more sassy kind of like posing that comes with bikini. So I mean, it's just totally what your body sort of fits into, really, and what you like and what you're willing to work towards.
Yeah, because like I said earlier, you know, sort of potentially 18 months or more for you for a muscle building phase. How have you found that going from, because obviously when you get to stage condition, when it's bikini, you're tiny, and then going into off season's hard anyway, as we all can appreciate. How did you find it that you were potentially going to gain, you know, 10 plus kilos, rather than it being more like staying, like we said, Steff, 6 to 8 kilos might be the sweet spot for an off season. But if you're going to move up a class, then, you know, Soph was looking at sort of 10 kilos and beyond. How was that mentally for you?
I think it's been okay. I look back at some of my pictures from when I was at my absolute heaviest over the summer, and kind of I was like, oh, like I saw some back the other day, and I was like, oh, like but at the time I wasn't uncomfortable with how I looked. Like, I was just happy with that I was getting heavier and bigger and stronger. So my focus hasn't really been to kind of what I look like in the mirror. Like, if it's off season, I don't really care at the minute. I kind of just want to be pushing better numbers, want my performance to be better. Everything is better in your off season. You sleep, the amount of food that you eat, everything is so much better. And I'm almost at 20 kilos up from stage weight, so so that's quite a big jump. But
like
it felt good.
It's like a grey area, isn't it, of and I'm sure you find that working with people, Steff, like how much is too much in an off season?
Yeah, I've got a kind of a bit of a thing about this in the industry, and this kind of term bulking, if you like, is something I really shy away from. And I think everybody's very different in terms of their frame and where they're coming from. So from a bikini to a figure competitor, I absolutely agree. There's probably a slightly larger surplus that the physique needs to be in to be able to grow, definitely. But I think there is a potential misunderstanding of how much fat the body has to have, or how much of a surplus the body needs in order to gain good muscle tissue in a structured program. So for me, whenever I'm kind of looking at bringing my clients into an off-season mode where the main aim is, of course, building hypertrophy, building good tissue, is ensuring that the majority of the food you're taking in is going to go to the performance of the training, not just for the sake of eating for calories. Do you know what I mean? Eating for additional food. So it's a fine line between getting enough in the system to, yes, have a bit more body fat so that joints are healthy, your sleep's good, hormones are back up to, really good function, etc., all of that. But at the same time, not having to go so far the other way that when you come back to actually getting in shape, you've not got tons and tons and tons to lose. And the other thing as well that I think is really important there is you need to have a gauge of growth. And if you are too heavy in terms of you've got too much body fat at the same time as pushing up, it's very difficult for the visual eye, unless you've got somebody looking at you all the time, to know what proportion of that is really good solid growth in terms of muscle tissue and what actually is fat. And you won't know that until you strip that back a little bit. So for me, making sure you've got a decent body composition whilst growing is the perfect scenario, but it's very difficult to do.
Seeing Soph as well go through that, I think because she got so tiny for the rhinos when we compete, and actually, you don't realize how much little muscle you have until you do your first show, and you think, well, I could definitely gain some muscle there. And I've done it through several off seasons, and Soph, her coach is her partner, a bit like you've got Andrew, you've actually got that critical eye that
so good.
And he's not afraid to say, we need to pull back, or we need to put the macros up, or whatever. But you can actually see the quality muscle coming with, so she's not spilling over, she's not just eating shit all the time. It's a constructive off season. It's really good to see. It's refreshing because like you touched on there, you come across so much of this sort of, I'm going to eat in a surplus for the sake of eating in a surplus.
Yeah, there's like a kind of it's almost like a trendy way of doing an off season, like, oh, I'm bulking. But what does that actually mean? And I often talk to people about this, like, ask your coach, what does bulking mean? Like, why are you bulking? And what is the bulk? Is it, I'm just loading you full of calories so you're not hungry all the time? Is it the fact that you have got a structured bulk which is going in tandem with the training? What is it? Because it's kind of one of those terms that gets tossed around, and if you're not careful, suddenly you can be at a very high end weight and not comfortable, and things aren't really moving properly, and it can be detrimental to your performance in the gym. Like, you'll start to feel sluggish, your central nervous system will be down, you won't be as cardiovascularly fit, so you actually can't get your top set because you're blowing, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many different things that are involved in that, so it's just being really careful about what that means and making sure you do it properly.
So there's a very fine line between too much and too little.
It totally is.
Where you've sort of said, I'm going to pull back a little bit and then go again, and with all this COVID going on and lockdowns and stuff, it's like, when are you going to be able to compete? And we've had this conversation about, you want to go into figure, but like you said, Steff, how do you know if you're appropriate for figure till you do a stage prep again?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's a really good question. It's like, how do you make the deciding factor? And usually, a bit like where you are, Sophie, like you've done your bikini contest, you've looked at your physique in that manner, you've come away from it, you've got probably more in the tank, and you've got two things going on there. You've got your physique telling you can probably grow, and you've also got your psychology saying that you like that look, you prefer that look. So you've got like these two kind of strands like pulling you in that direction, which is really cool. And I think, like, if you're a naturally smaller as a female, if you naturally are smaller in your frame and you've maybe got a really tight midsection and you're quite lean and you've got quite round glutes, and you prefer a division where you can sort of express yourself individually on stage with a bit of flair and maybe a bit more sort of sassy or sexy way, for a starting place for somebody who's kind of in that zone. But if you're sort of somebody who likes to have that more athletic, tight, defined muscle, and you like that style vision, and fit, it's such a nice figure there. You have toes, you have more traits with so you can get smaller or bigger.
Oh, I don't know if Steff's gone. So we were talking about how there's so many different categories. So it's like you've got toned figure and then you've got figure, and it's trying to differentiate between them. But if you do a stage prep and you're hoping for a category as well, and maybe you've been rehearsing for that, like you said, individual routine and stuff, you know, it's very different bikini and figure posing.
Yeah.
So, you know, imagine Soph's built a whole routine, everything's nailed. You get a few weeks out and you think, I don't know if I'm ready for figure, or do I go back to bikini? And I'd imagine, you know, people in a similar scenario, it's quite a tough decision to make.
Yeah, I mean, totally. Like, to give you an example as well, like I had a client who we'd been working on through her off season for figure, and really, really lovely look, has built some nice tissue on her frame, but slow progression rate, and that's a whole other conversation. But some of us girls can put it on like that, some of us can't. Yeah. And it's she was really doing nicely through her off season, but as we started to take it off, I just couldn't help but feel like she was actually going to be a lot more competitive in the bikini class. Yeah. And it was hard because I kind of had to say to her, like, I want to see you pose in figure and I want to see you pose in bikini, and I'm going to give you my honest opinion. And as we started to come down and she was posing more and more, I just had to say to her, you know, that she'd be doing her physique a disservice at that point by not going into open bikini, because she was really on point. She had fuller glutes, she was neater in the waist, she had that lovely little taper, but it wasn't enough for figure at that point. Yeah. And she went on into UKDFBA and ended up taking the bikini win for that class. And it was just one of those kind of really, really interesting ones where her rate of progression just wasn't quite enough to make the transition yet. But she was so glad that when she brought it down, how much better her physique looked for bikini. So this is where that kind of visual eye and knowing what's looking for from a judging perspective and what the physique should look like at different stages helps make sure that you're going to be as competitive as you can be.
Yeah, because again, it's different federations, isn't it? Do you know, have you decided yet, Soph, what sort of federation you're going to go with, or are you still?
I literally have no idea. I think it's going to be one of those kind of like suck it and see moments of when we come down, what am I looking like at a point now, and then make a decision from there, because figure is only the eventual goal. If I've got and the more you keep prepping, the better your look gets anyway. And it's so beneficial to be able to come down on prep for then your next off season, because I found the rebound effect was amazing, like absolutely amazing. I literally built like straight away. And then I think it can get trickier the longer your off season goes. It gets trickier. So I'll be definitely ready to come back down and then just kind of see how it goes. And then just kind of gauge from there, really, whether it would be toned, whether it would be, I don't think I'm quite ready yet for like athletic figure, but whether it would be toned figure to kind of give me a bit of a taste, or whether, you know, this is a much better look and I can stick with that bikini and the posing that I've already practiced for hours and hours and hours, and maybe have a little bit more confidence in that.
Yeah.
And then just go from there.
So when you went from after the show, did you keep your training the same when you went into thinking you wanted to gear things towards figure? Did you just get back in a surplus and focus the energy?
yeah, we jumped up quite quickly from kind of, I think my lowest I only ever got to was about 1,200 calories. So I was lucky that I didn't have to go down too horrendously low. So we jumped up quite quick, but my body responded amazingly. And I mean, the 2 weeks when you come out of after the competition, when you're really full but still lean at the same time, you're like, oh God, I feel amazing. And I think I gained 10 kg literally within maybe like 3 weeks. So it was ridiculous. But training literally stayed the same, just mentality of get stronger. I think that's why I was able to do that competition after just such a short amount of time, because I've always got the mentality of 100% or nothing. When I go in to train, it's always absolute, I'm trying as hard as I possibly can. So was exactly the same as when I came out after the competition. I got straight back to it and have just been trying to progress those lifts, get stronger, train smarter, and just try and get better and better and better with that. And it's been a really nice focus, rather than thinking, oh, what's my physique looking like. I've just been taking it back and just enjoying actually training, because that's what I loved initially about bodybuilding, was the actual training. Like, training isn't a chore, like just to get an end goal of a physique. Like, I absolutely love the training side of it already. So just being able to do a competition is kind of like a side bonus. Like, the physique you get is sort of a side bonus, really. So yeah, it's pretty much stayed the same, of intensity up and just trying to get stronger and stronger and stronger.
Yeah, because that mentality as well, I'm sure you agree, Steph, you have to be so careful with that, not taking over where you want to do 100% all the time. And we've spoken, Soph, about when you've had injuries come up and stuff like that, we're both guilty, I guess, of being hard on ourselves to think that you've always got to give 100%. If you're scheduled to do legs twice, upper body 3 times, and you've hurt your leg and you can't do legs for a week, suddenly you're in this like, oh, my muscles all, I don't know what to do. And you start chopping and changing things to facilitate having an injury in a negative way if you go 1,000,000% all the time. And it's like you said, learning from experience and going through prep after prep, that's certainly something I'd say my journey has helped me learn, that there's a fine line with going too far into it, but wanting to pull back and still give 100%, but just be smart and be careful with your approach.
Definitely be smart, rather than just, I think people get too caught up with being totally, absolutely everything's got to be maximum effort, and you've got to do loads of sets and loads of reps. And people think that always more is better, and it's not always. And it's important to take rest and to look after your body and do the other things that you like as well, that make you happy, not just training. That's really, really important.
And like we've always said, with things like doing your food prep and all the things you need to put into it, we said before we started the video today, things like disordered eating and, becoming very obsessive when you're in a prep, especially that tail end, maybe 6 to 8 weeks out. I said before, I've always been quite neurotic at that stage, and that's something that I'm learning to deal with as I move forward. But certainly if you're in your first prep, you almost come away from what you enjoyed, like the training becomes so much harder. And it's almost like an effort to just get to the gym sometimes, in the sake of, sometimes you can hardly move your legs because you're into a deficit and everything else. And it's those times that perhaps people don't appreciate when you're looking at it. I want to get shredded. It's not quite what it looks like on Instagram sometimes. And, it is the truth of the sport. When you do get truly stage lean, it's another level. And we can all appreciate from competing ourselves and Steff working with people, the most random of things come up. And it's things like, as females, losing your period, not sleeping, which you mentioned there, so being obsessive, coming away from social situations, all of those things that they do play a part. It's dealing with that and being able to, especially with COVID and everything going on and people going into preps at this time of year. I mean, there's still hopes for a show at the end of March. I think Two Bros are still going.
Yeah, they've still got theirs prepared for that. So we'll wait and see what happens with that one. Yeah.
So it's certainly, it's trying to, I guess, learn from those experiences and realize that anything you're trying to master, and if it's something that you do want to do, you know, multiple times, like Soph's hoping to do, and like we have already done, Steff, there's so many lessons to be learned, and it's trying to nourish that rather than think you should know everything has to be to the letter, like you said, Stove, you know, hitting your macros and things like that. There is slight leeways. The more and more you get into it, you realize, oh, I could go 5 grams over my carbs today, and then I could go 5 grams under tomorrow. Brilliant. Rather than every day thinking it needs to be exact to the letter, because life's not linear, is it? I mean, I don't know how you approach.
Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm listening to that, and I completely agree. I think it's all relative to kind of the part, the where you are in that scale. Like if I take sort of my very first prep was that learning process, and if I think back to my very first one, with the nature of the type of person I am, I'm quite like similar to what you said, Sophie, but all or nothing. So my first prep was literally what was written down was what I did. Yeah. That was it. And I remember even in my very first prep, because you learn when the body's in a deficit what hunger feels like, and you've maybe never felt that before. And I remember very much like in the first one feeling really hungry one specific day, and to the point where I was like, I don't think I should ever feel like this. But as I've gone through the preps, I've realized that at certain points, the body is fighting you every second of the way to get that next level off, that next bit of body fat off, you know, and as it goes down. And now I understand what my body is telling me in terms of a feedback. So I understand it, and it doesn't psychologically impact me like it did in the first couple of preps. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if I take the kind of principle of a little bit of leeway, yeah, I think in your amateur run up to wherever you want to get to with this, you've got a certain element of leeway because the body is learning. If I take a look at kind of my first, I mean, I don't know about you, Sarah, if a switch sort of changed for you, but the year I went for my pro card, I visualized getting that. So it was everything I did. That prep was completely different because it was all or nothing, and it was literally not a single thing out of place. Like every single thing was diligent. And I would still say to anybody who wants to get to that level, if you're going to want to get to that type of conditioning as a female competitor, you're going to have to throw everything into it, and that is hard as fuck, excuse my French, but it is. It's the nature of the beast. This is so extreme when you're talking of getting to the conditioning for the figure class. And you can see how much bigger and thicker and harder these girls are now, especially in the UK. They're getting ripped, and to get to that level of lean, there is an element of suffering in it, and it's hard. Yeah.
And it's almost that acceptance that is going to happen.
Exactly.
And I think we're probably all exactly the same with definitely that first prep. You know, everything was exact for me, and probably for my first 3 preps, because, you know, like you said about coaching and mentoring, Stephen used to have to say to me, you know, we need to try and find a happy medium here, because I was actually causing myself a lot of stress by being so intense. And I could, you know, pull back because I flexible diet. I could, you know, have a slight leeway with, like I say, one day I might go over by 5 grams and one day I might go under by 5 grams on my carbs or something. I tend to not do that because I quite like hitting my exact numbers, even in my off season, and I can joke about it now. But, you know, it's trying to learn where you're at on your journey, what you need to do to facilitate what your next goal is, and then, you know, lending what you're doing appropriately to that. Like Sophie and I have said before, some people think I want to get stage lean to go on a beach, or, you know, definitely do not want to get stage lean to go and sit on a beach, because actually, you know, I remember once I was probably about a month out from a show, and I went to a spa day thing at a hotel, and I sat in the sauna and I thought, like, everything was, and I was thinking, and I'd always had
They're like popping out your head, and you're like,
this like secret aspiration to be ripped at a spa day, because I'd always gone to them in my off season because I could potentially maybe have a day off, plan and eat some different food and stuff like that. And I went and I thought, Christ, this is not a good idea. Like the mixture of the sauna and obviously a spa day, relaxing, and I felt horrendous all day. And actually I realised, no, I wouldn't want to be lean for a holiday or a spa day. You know, it's definitely what we call lean is very different, isn't it? And also on that sort of tangent, I've met a lot of people that are looking to compete, and they've said to me, I know I've got a lot of muscle under this fat. I've just got to get the fat off. And, you know, I always say to them, wait until you get closer and then reassess. You might do a photo shoot and then do an off season, work on the areas you need to, and then compete. Because if you put all your eggs in one basket, then you're definitely going to compete, and you've only weight trained for 2 months, you've never done sport maybe, and then you think you're going to get stage lean and you know, place. Are you being realistic? And that's obviously where a coach comes in. But you know, there's so many different realms here that you can dive into, isn't there, with you know, getting to stage condition.
Totally. I mean, I think for even to, you know, the terminology of getting lean, you have to have muscle to get lean.
Yeah.
There's, you know, just losing weight for the sake of it isn't the same thing. Losing weight and getting lean are different. It's like that kind of losing weight and fat loss are different. You know, it's like that different kind of view of the physique. And yeah, I completely agree with everything you've just said there, Sarah. It's just it's a very different kettle of fish, and I think that's part of the whole learning process when you first come into the sport. And if you are one of those people who find a coach, and luckily now in the realm of social media, it really does show people now finding out before they start to do the shows. You know, they're not just rolling out at the gym and getting on stage. Now people are actually seeking out the knowledge and the help and the expertise with it. That's where like the coach or somebody who has viewed this sport will come in and say, well, 2 months of training, if that's all you've done, is probably not going to be enough. You're going to need a good year until you want to be thinking about tackling a stage lean condition of good solid training. I mean, that would be my advice straight off the bat to anybody who's considering it. There is a bit of nuance there with the bikini classes, because you don't have to have as much muscle, of course, but you still want to have enough so that when you lean out or you diet down, you're not just skin and bone. You know, you're not just a skinny girl on stage, because that's also detrimental, because it means that whatever you might have had, you might diet off completely and you have to start completely all over again.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things there. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and you need some structure really to be able to come down from. I think people have a bit of a misconception of, you know, they've got no structure with their eating habits, especially like, oh, they'll just pick up like maybe 2 meals a day or whatever, and then think they'll be able to diet down. But it doesn't really work like that. You've got to have some kind of structured calories to be able to come back down from, because otherwise you're going to leave yourself with nothing whatsoever. But that was where a coach comes in and is really helpful. But for people that think maybe they could like help like do it themselves, they've got to have some kind of structure to be able to come back down from. Otherwise, if they're already doing loads of cardio, loads of steps, and not eating very much, then it's just not going to be able to work, or you're going to put yourself in a horrible position and get down to eating dust and doing loads and loads of output, and then you leave yourself in all sorts of messed up places because your head gets messed up in that kind of process along the way.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Did you find, so coming from just sort of enjoying the gym going into a stage prep, that there was big changes, or was it quite a natural?
Definitely the eating that was my main thing. And I learned a lot more about training as I went on through my first little tiny off season. I learned a lot more about training and what it was to actually push myself, because I was kind of just dabbling and I had an okay shape, but there wasn't really anything there. Like if I'd have dieted down straight away, there would have been nothing. I would have been skin and bones. So I needed at least a little bit of time to be able to learn, and to be able to learn about that I wasn't eating enough. Like I was just about scraping 2,000 calories, and at the end I was eating like 3,200, I think was the maximum before I started to come back down again. So I managed to get that up while maintaining a good level of body composition. I'm quite lucky that my body takes on quite a lot of calories, which can also be a bit of a double-edged sword, because it means in off season you've got to eat loads. That's equally as uncomfortable as dieting down.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely had to have more structure in order to be able to come back, rather than just being like, oh, I'll just pick this up and I'll just pick that up from the shop and just eat that. Whereas then I started actually making sure that I got the right meals with me every single day. I mean, especially in your off season, you don't, especially if you're just getting into it, you don't need to be super strict all the time. And I think people can get too caught up with having to follow a plan rather than being a bit intuitive sometimes, especially if you've learned about food and know what you can eat every single day. Then it's nice to live an intuitive lifestyle and not have to live absolutely by the book every single day, because that can be as draining as dieting down if you're having to live by the book every single day. And it's so good, I found, for my mentality about it, to be able to be intuitive with my eating, rather than being like, oh, I've got the pressure, I've got to track things today, I've got the pressure of I've got to tick all these things off my list. Whereas now I've been training and eating right for a while, I know what I should be eating anyway. And once you get into that habit, it's so nice just to be able to be like, oh, I know that I can have this and I can have that, and not really have to think about it. You just kind of pick up things as the day goes along and not be obsessed with what is going in, which you do kind of have to get a level of obsessed when you do come back down again. So it's nice in your off season to be able to be a little bit more relaxed with it, rather than be like, oh my god, I've got to completely focus every single minute of every single day and make sure every single box is ticked. Because in off season you can just enjoy yourself a little bit, and unless bodybuilding is absolutely your life and you know that you want to dedicate every single thing to the sport, then there's no need. Like when you're 80 years old, you're not going to think, oh, I can't believe I missed that workout, or I didn't eat that meal that day. Like, you need sort of like a level of a balance, really. If you just want to have a little dabble in it, if you're going to get serious and you want to go for a pro card or something, then yeah, you've got to knuckle down and focus. But if you're just kind of getting into it, I think, especially on Instagram, you can see people that are so hardcore all the time. They never have an off-plan meal and they do this, and every single day I tick the box. That you can get a bit pressured by that. Like, I look at that and think, oh my god, I don't do that every day. Like, does that mean that I'm never going to be successful in it? And it doesn't mean that. Like, you can be intuitive and still be able to progress. It might take a little bit longer, but if you're enjoying the journey, then why not?
Yeah, and I guess also realizing that, what is you're striving to do, and how am I going to facilitate that? And like you said there, if it takes you an extra 3 months to do whatever part of your journey you're on, and you're happy with that, and it's because you've got, a family holiday coming up, or you've got a big occasion that you're leading towards, and you need to be able to facilitate that, and at that time in your life it's more important, and like you say, you're not bodybuilding as a profession per se, that is realistic for you. And that's why this has to be an intrinsic journey. It's bespoke to you. I mean, what would you say the biggest contributors were to you coming through that, feeling the need to be exact and then being able to be more intuitive?
I think I get too easily influenced by what I see online and seeing other people that are 110% every single minute of every single day, and then you feel so pressured, like, oh god, I don't do that, so like, if I don't do that, then I'm not going to be like how they are. But then you've just got to kind of realize, well, actually, am I enjoying my life as it is right now? Then I shouldn't feel pressured by that. I should just enjoy what I'm doing and take it as I am, rather than what other people are doing. And
so
I think
like a big turning point with that, like, can you remember why you suddenly were able to switch that on its head?
I think, well, last year I decided not to eat meat anymore. So that was a bit of a challenge, really, being a bodybuilder, because I ate so much meat on prep. It was ridiculous. I literally was eating steak every single day. So I made the decision last year not to eat meat anymore. I've always been a massive animal lover, and I've just wanted to give it up. So that was quite a big journey to be able to be like, okay, I've sort of got rid of something that I thought was absolutely required to be a bodybuilder, and I'm still being able to carry on my journey without that. Because when you see other people doing bodybuilding, they're all eating chicken and rice and steak, that's like a typical sort of bodybuilder food, and then to not do that, I was thinking, oh my god, like, am I still going to be able to do this? And it's taken a while, but I've completely figured it out. And from there, I've kind of had a bit of a new perspective of, oh well, you don't have to conform to what everybody else is doing in order to still be able to progress in your own way.
Yeah. And I get, Steff, do you have many vegan clients? I guess that has its own complexities, and you're yet to do a prep with, as a vegan, so it must be yeah.
Well, what's amazing is I've actually got about 10 vegan, very popular veganism right now. So
it's very popular.
Super popular. And I'm just going to put a couple of names down for anyone who's interested in seeing a bodybuilding transformation of somebody who's totally vegan. Go and check out my client, Melanie, Mission Melanie is her name on Instagram, and Nicole Third. There are two of my clients at the moment who are vegan bodybuilders, both who have gone through competition prep phases or body transformations. And you can just have a look at that as a visual representation of how it's absolutely possible on a vegan diet to get in pinnacle bodybuilding shape.
Yeah.
But it, like you say, Sophie, I mean, it poses its own set of challenges, because with, of course, a vegan diet, the main concern is making sure that the protein intake is up there without having a lot of additional fiber and carbohydrate and things in there as well. So you have to kind of work around the balance. And one of the things Andrew and I do, we actually buy all of the vegan produce and taste it and eat it ourselves every now and again, so that we actually know what it tastes like, so that when we give out our bodybuilding diets with vegan foods in them, we know they actually taste good. Because the worst thing is saying, like, yeah, go eat this, and it's just horrible, you know what I mean? So
some of the protein powders are horrendous.
Yeah.
Absolutely horrendous. I got oh my god, I got given some, and they were like, I really hate this, it made my porridge turn green, do you want to try it? And I was like, oh yeah. And I smelt it, it was meant to be like banana caramel flavor, and I put it in my porridge, and I probably had 2 mouthfuls and was like, what it tastes like grass.
That's it. And I mean, it's all about that. It's like, I think if you're a good coach, you can bring anybody with any specific dietary requirement into shape, but you've got to learn about their diet. You've got to do their diet as well. Like, I've actually experimented doing different kinds of diets for clients so that I know it kind of works, or at least I know that what I'm writing out is going to be a nice blend that they're going to enjoy. So there's all of that, definitely. But I think that you've just said so many really important things, Sophie, about how social media, particularly at the moment as well, can impact like our understanding of what's working hard enough or what's doing enough to become, the competitive bodybuilder. And I think, when you were just saying that there, I was thinking some of the things you said about having balance in your off season is very important. I completely agree with that. And knowing that if you are 90% doing your journey and you've got your own plan and it's very intrinsic to you, and you're enjoying that and you're enjoying your life and the other things in your life, that is just as important. Like, online, we only see snippets of what people want us to see. And if you are that high level competitive bodybuilder, the only thing they're going to show you is that high level bodybuilding competitor. Do you know what I mean? They're not going to show you all the other areas of your life. And that area of their life might be super, super, super optimal and amazing, but what's going on with the other areas of their life?
Yeah, are there any other areas of their life?
Yeah, I think that what is lacking a lot with competitors is they give their whole life to bodybuilding, but it can be short-lived. Like if an injury comes up, or they decide maybe they want to have children, or anything that can come up that would stop that career. And then especially for women as well, that get into taking PEDs, and then they'll take that for a certain amount of time and maybe not understand fully the repercussions that it can have, and then later on in life maybe can't have kids, which they've wanted to do. And then it's kind of like, well, was it worth it to put your body through all of that just for some competitions, like you have to have kind of like a perspective on what you want to do after bodybuilding. And I think it can be difficult for when it ends as well, for people that like, well, where do I go from here? Like, what do I do with my life? Like, when my bodybuilding career is over, then what do I do? Like, I've given everything to that, but it is only ever really short-lived, because you can't maintain that forever.
No.
Doing such a hard lifestyle.
It's definitely one of those things, isn't it, that we touched on it last week, Steff. You become a bodybuilder and it becomes a huge part of your identity. But then you think, oh, like for me, oh, I'm a wife as well. Shit, I forgot about that. And it, you know, and things like you're a daughter, or you've got other things, you're a manager at work, you coach people, you do different things. And then I think sometimes in a prep, I'm certainly guilty of going so tunnel vision that I actually forget that there is a life outside of bodybuilding. And I have sacrificed, not sacrificed, maybe the wrong word, but relationships for me have gone to the side and they've gone away from my life because I've put bodybuilding first, and I wanted to do that at that time. But like you said, Steff, if you're doing something with intent and you're realizing that and taking ownership for it, you've got to realize what's right for you at the right time.
Yeah. And it's like, as well, like I always think it's really interesting, bodybuilding, because there is no financial reward for this sport,
if anything,
right?
detriment financially.
You're not, because we talk about kind of our bodybuilding careers and our pursuits. I kind of see it as like, when I started bodybuilding, I didn't ever start it with the thought process of this being my be all and end all for my life, for my well-being, for my, for growing and whatever I'm doing. I saw this as something that I wanted to challenge my body, and something I really liked. I thought it was really fun, and I thought this is going to be, there's elements to these females' physiques that I aspired to, because I had other pursuits that were physical as well. Yeah. So kind of came out of sport and then into this, and then of course it's molded into my work and everything else. But I always think it's really funny, because you see so many people talking about it like it's like a Ferrari or something, like it's like so much money and so much kind of, this is what I'm going to be. And I just feel like if you go down that route of it being all consuming, unless you are the top 1% of people that might get, I don't know, kind of sponsorship contracts, or, you're the top, I'm talking the top of the top of the top here.
Yeah.
What are you gaining for that that's going to benefit the rest of your life as well, not just your aesthetic?
Yeah.
Like, not just how you look. And that's,
it's just a hobby, really, isn't it? It's literally just a hobby, because it's so difficult to make a career out of it. And it's so subjective as well. Even if you are a pro and get to go to a pro show, and where there is potential of winning money, you don't know who's going to turn up on the day. You don't know if you've done every single thing that's right in order to be able to win that top check. Yeah. which is probably not going to be a massive amount anyway.
In order to visions, that's for sure.
In order to be able to make that into a career, and then you'd have to just be able to be doing back-to-back shows in order to try and get any money out of it. So it's essentially just a hobby for most people.
Totally. It comes back to that sort of being realistic about it, doesn't it? It's like, be real about like your goals. This is an awesome thing to do, and I would love to inspire so many people to do this journey, because I think, similar to the sort of things that you and I, Sarah, have spoken about in last podcast, is it teaches you so much about your ability to then be confident, push forward with your goals, that these skills are transferable into all other areas of your life, like to your business, to your relationships, to your work, or to just generally being a more confident, assertive person to go out there and do what you want to do in the world. Like, that's the kind of stuff that you get from bodybuilding, as well as then the excitement of potentially challenging yourself to win something. That's really cool as well. But it's like that line then of, don't let it take over everything, but see it for what it is, and then use what else can you get from it that can help you be a better, full-rounded person as well.
You've definitely found that, haven't you, Sophie? Like, I've seen the change in you from when you used to work in, a job that you maybe weren't completely happy with, and you were doing it because it was a job, and you maybe didn't realize your potential as a personal trainer and what you had to offer people. And now you're working somewhere where they appreciated you. And I remember when you went for the interview and they were like, we want you. And for you, it was like, you want me? oh, okay. And you know, you've evolved, and you know, to a certain degree, bodybuilding for me, exactly like you said, Steff, it's the same thing. And for you, so you get this level of, I am good enough.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm good enough at work. Maybe I can, you know, do more in my personal life as well as bodybuilding. And you get that, you know, air of confidence. And all of us, we maintain that humbleness as well. You know, it's not egotistical for me. This is, you know, for an internal challenge, like you said, Steff. It's, can I get lean? How am I going to do it? What am I going to learn along the way? Then you come into an off season, then it's, can I get leaner next time? And it's always this like rabbit wheel of, you know, how far can you take it? And I guess for you, Soph, going from bikini to figure is the real challenge here.
Yeah, and I think it's like the simplest form of like personal growth is bodybuilding, because you can physically see yourself change, and then you put in the hard work, and then you get dieted down again and step on stage again, and you're better. So each time you're physically seeing yourself grow as a person through actually putting in the hard work and reaping the benefits of that, like irregardless of as to whether you get a placing or not. It's always, you know, you've got to try and beat what you were last time, and that's like a really important thing to be able to take away and put into your real normal life. Of actually, if I put the work in, I am going to get better, and it translates really easily to that
Across the rest of your life. Do you find that, are you almost, because I've always thought as figure, I guess I feel like that's almost moving up, although it's the same discipline and you're all doing a stage prep, and you know, whether you're bikini, figure, bodybuilding, whatever it is, it's almost like it's the next stage up. Does that offer a level of uncertainty for you? Do you feel?
Oh, definitely, and and it's kind of like moving up to figure. You've got to be in it for longer. You've got to keep training for longer. Like, I only trained for like 6 months to be able to do a bikini competition, but now I know that I'm in for kind of like another few years of actually doing that cycle of getting better, dieting down, getting better, dieting down. So then to try and pursue that goal, I know that I've got to kind of commit myself to a lot longer kind of slog, but just enjoy the process at the same time.
What do you see as the biggest challenge going into figure? Like, what scares you the most?
Oh my God, posing 100%. And an individual routine. Oh my God, definitely.
Why does it scare you so much, Sophie? Like, what are you worrying about?
Being on stage, for one, was terrifying, but also kind of like exhilarating at the same time. And because I've only done it once, I kind of feel like, and it's been such a long time, stepping into another category is going to give me that same feeling as my first show. Because you're kind of stepping up to a whole different ball game that you don't know what to expect when you step into that. So it's always that kind of like uncertainty of, oh my God, who's going to be there? Like, what am I going to do? It's kind of like starting it all afresh again, moving up into another category.
Steff, what would you say the biggest differences are from the bikini category as a whole and then figure, for people that are sort of, I guess anyone listening thinking, what category would I fit? What would be your sort of biggest bit of advice, apart from, I guess, looking at the different federations and the criteria?
Yeah, I mean, that's the obvious first one, is every federation has its own understanding of what the rules and criteria want. But I think it goes across the board. If we look way back and we look at how far figures come, the same things apply, which is a tight, defined look is the figure class. You're looking on, sort of focusing on a really strong V-taper, wide shoulders, narrow waist, nice sweeping quads, thick hamstrings, tight glutes with a nice like top ledge to the glute as well. Delts, fully capped, thick delts are really prominent in the figure class. And
that, aren't you, so?
Yeah, delts. And then of course you're looking at a moderate to slightly larger amount of muscle mass, of course, on the frame. and a small, when you're talking about coming down into the details, like you're now looking at smaller striations coming through the actual muscle themselves. So the muscle has to be dense and thick enough to show that conditioning. And that's what sort of what I was saying earlier, is that in order to get condition for the figure class, you have to have the muscle. And that's the difference. It's like it's a thicker amount of structured muscle on a frame that you're trying to sculpt and mold into this X shape. And so the training and the structure for training for figure is very different to that of bikini, because for the bikini classes, you might be looking at not maybe fleshing out so much the upper body and concentrating a lot more in, well, still keeping obviously nice detail and cap and you know, nice lines through your arms and your upper back, etc. But you're really trying to emphasize your glutes, you're trying to emphasize your legs, you're trying to keep a tiny little waist, and then trying to rotate in contortion using the posing is vital for bikini. So I guess the answer is how to work out how to decide what you like is back to what I said, to sort of where Sophie's at, which is, do you like the look of figure for a start? Because some girls don't want to be muscular as muscular as that, and they want to keep it more on the neater toned style of a look. So that would be the first one. And the second thing is, are you willing to start the intensity of the training? Like Sophie, you've just mentioned, the intensity of training to get the size on your physique to be competitive in the figure class is, yeah, it's a whole other ballgame.
And like you said, it's definitely changed, hasn't it, over the years? Like even bikini now, I see so much now where it's almost like it's gone a bit muscular.
I'd say it's almost bordering on, like if you look at some of the NPC and IFBB bikini ladies, you know, now you're looking at, you know, toned figure over here.
Yeah. And
in some cases.
Yeah. You compete internationally, it's like, you know, when I competed in Mexico, the lady that won the pro show was insane. Like she probably could have done figure. Like yeah, some serious glutes, quads and everything. And then, you know, when I competed in Portugal, it's very different. It was more of a leaner look. So, you know, it's so subjective, like you said, Soph. If you put everything into this and you do every part of minutiae of what bodybuilding can offer you, and then you go to a show and you know you've done everything to the letter, and somebody else turns up on the day that the judges are subjective to, and you know they place higher, it's not that you haven't done what's required, it's you haven't done anything wrong. But ultimately you need to go into this realizing that it doesn't matter if you've done everything exact, you're not always going to win, you're not always going to place. So if you can do it for you and then, you know, potentially win or place or wherever that may go, you're going to get that almost like as a bonus, because you've already done that prep and you've got to the stage. But it's understanding what you can put in ultimately and what you're going to get out, isn't it?
Yeah, and you said something as well there, like that classes are evolving every year.
Yeah,
bikini is evolving every year. You know, we then have other classes that come in. We've got trained bikini now, which effectively, if you take everything I've just said about being hard and conditioned, that is what they want in trained bikini. There's so many evolutions of the classes year on year, and it's difficult for the competitor to keep up with that, because you might look at last year's winner or the year before's winner, and last year's winner was nothing like the years before winner, and then, you know, I mean, it can be really subjective. It can't, well, it's always going to be subjective, but I guess like you've got to bring the best version of yourself for as close to the criteria as possible. That's kind of what you need to be trying to achieve. And in the figure class, of course, that's a bigger, more conditioned look. And then, of course, yeah, as Sophie's worrying about a different set of poses in which, you know, the quarter turns are very, very static and are a lot more about tension and pushing out and really forcing the muscle to hold what I call an isolation. It's like it's an actual exercise in itself, if you like. Whereas in bikini, it's a lot more about rotations and really trying to hitch your glutes up and, you know, angle yourself so you're creating illusions and dimensions and things like that. So there's so much in it that you just have to break down specifically for your fed and your class, and then try and hit it as close to that as you can.
Yeah, and it's trying to realize where you fit sometimes, isn't it? Like you said, Soph, you know, there's your frame, there's, you know, what your shape is naturally. You've almost got to notice that and be objective, or have a coach or someone close to you that can help guide you, because it's sometimes that point where, you know, first time competitors will understand this. It's like, which federation do I fit in? Which category do I fit in? How do I know which category to choose? Am I going to get lean enough? Am I going to get too lean? There's so many different questions. And I think, so you sort of touched on it before, it's going into your first show with minimal expectations, and then for you placing and getting third place. What a phenomenal achievement for your first show. Incredible. And it's amazing what you did there. Not everyone has that experience, so it's difficult, isn't it? And always goes back to having those intrinsic reasons, you doing it for you, and understanding that everything you do on the journey is evolving you as a person, you know, taking it for what it is, using that identity. But you're not just a bodybuilder, you've got a name as well, haven't you?
Yeah.
And taking everything into consideration, the social media, it's always it's a highlight reel, isn't it? It's not everyone, you know, you're not going to see everyone all of their flaws. You're seeing everyone posing to what they feel is their good side, not their weaker side. They're going to highlight if they've got good glutes but not very good delts. You're going to see pictures of their glutes all the time. That is how it is. But it's just trying to remain that you're objective about your own progress as well.
Yeah, I think what's really helpful as well is I went to watch my first show. I know that's a bit tricky at the minute, but I went to watch my first show I think it was 4 weeks out of actually doing the show, because I kept seeing all these pictures online. And when you see people who are competing in real life, they look a lot different to what they look in pictures. So that kind of was really like, oh, okay. I saw the girls on stage and was like, oh, okay. I felt like a air of relief, really, because I was like, oh, okay, my body, I actually look like how they look on stage. So then it kind of makes it slightly easier rather than just going on pictures all the time, because like you just said, Sarah, it's always just your best angle or your best shot. And when you've got the tan on and your hair and makeup and you're in the pose, you look very different to when you're actually sat there watching people go through their quarter turns.
Yeah.
So I think that's really, really helpful, or to be able to actually see what competitors really look like in real life. Because a lot of the time it's not what you see in pictures. They do look a little bit more normal than you would imagine them to be.
Yeah. What would your biggest bit of advice be to someone, if someone's listening and they're thinking about competing? What would your number one bit of advice be? So
Give it a bloody go. What have you got to lose?
get stuck in.
Get stuck in, and make sure that you've got a good coach that absolutely understands you and your needs, and that you have a good connection with. I think that's really, 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 really important, because I know quite a few people that have had awful, horrendous bodybuilding experiences because they had a poor coach, and then they've now were really against bodybuilding because they're like, oh, I've had an awful experience, I never want to do that again, and discourage people from taking it up. So it's just because they've had an experience with a coach who maybe didn't know what they were doing or hadn't had much experience coaching people in the past, and then it's kind of messed their view of bodybuilding up. So it's really important to have a coach that understands you and that you have a good connection with, and that you can talk to about anything and be honest with as well. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, it is. Well, Steff will relate because you are a coach, but it's like, it's silly things. Like, I respond better generally to Stephen being a male coach. I find that I feel like I can offload with him easier than I would when I've worked with female coaches before. And, you know, there's certain things like that you almost need to recognize in yourself. Who do you gel with better? You know, what works for you as an individual? And then also finding a coach that has empathy and that inspires you. And I'm sure you do a great job at that, Steff, because of your own accolades in the sport. I mean, you can't get much more motivational than your coach being, you know, a professional athlete and coming from amateur to pro. It speaks volumes, doesn't it? You know, if someone's got a natural interest in our sport, it really does help, rather than, like we say on Instagram and stuff, when you see these before and afters, but the coaches never maybe prepped themselves, or, you know, had anything really to do with it. They're just getting people lean off the bat, and, you know, not much empathy going on there. So it's, like you say, Sophie, it's so important, but it's also very hard to find a good coach.
Yeah, and I was going to say as well, like, and it's super kind, like you saying that about, you know, your coach being an athlete themselves, but equally, the flip side of that is sometimes if somebody's a really amazing bodybuilder that you follow or whatever, doesn't necessarily translate into being a good coach as well. That's another thing to mention, because I kind of talk about this, like, I like my clients to feel like I walk the walk and talk the talk. That's my whole mythology of the education and learning that I've put in. I've always coached myself. I've got myself to where I want to be, but I'm a teacher at the end of the day. Like, I like to educate and teach other people to do this.
Yeah.
It just so happens that I've, you know, obviously done it within my own body and my own sort of pursuits, but I'm lucky enough to also share my coaching with my partner, who comes at it from a scientific evidence-based point of view. So we've kind of got the best of both worlds, in the sense that we're both applying in the field in terms of our own bodies, but we're actually, he's from a scientific doctor of bodybuilding research background, and I'm from, you know, a strength and conditioning background, and a posing and a dance and a cognitive sort of anatomy background, so I can apply that. So it's kind of, I'm very lucky in that sense, because, you know, when I have an idea, he bounces it off me, I bounce it off him, and he does the same with me, and we work well that way. So yeah, and I tend to find that if a female has a problem in a bodybuilding capacity, I've been there and done it, you know, I've had that issue, so I know how to go about that. Whereas he might find that that's a bit more difficult to deal with, you know, because he hasn't, it's very easy to say it might be this, unless you've actually experienced those psychological effects of certain things. It's quite hard to relate, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's definite, and it's so much personal preference. Like I said, you know,
Totally.
I work well with Stephen as a male, and it didn't work so well when I worked with a female, but that's me. And then, you know, Sophie's very similar as well, and you've had people at the show before, haven't you, Soph, say, well, I wouldn't be able to be coached by my other half, but actually, you know, you and Tin work really well. He's very objective, and he doesn't say, oh, just have that to eat, you know. He's like, have you done your calories today? Have you done this? Have you done that? This is where we're heading, this. And he, you know, he'll talk about Soph sometimes like she's almost someone different, and it's not his other half, because he's got that ability to switch between the two. And I'm sure you find that with Andrew, and I'm lucky for Kieran, he can be quite subjective as well. And it's also, when you're that close with a partner, you know, for those people that are working alongside a partner and that's someone that's critiquing them, you have to be careful with that as well. You know, they're not being horrible to you, they're actually trying to help you and, you know, evolve as an athlete. So it's you've got to understand what works for you.
Totally. And I think, like, just something I thought about when you were talking about figuring out sort of where to go in the sport and how to begin, or what class you should be in, or where, you know, starting, etc. The coach is very important, of course, but I also find that a lot of, and if we're I mean, both guys and females think this, but if we're just concentrating on females here, I often find that if a client comes to me and goes, I have no idea what class I'm in, I don't know whether it's this, I don't know where to start, I will effectively show them the photos of kind of people in either one and say, where do you feel like, genuinely, when you look at that, which one do you feel more like you look like? And as soon as they make that representation, it totally clicks, you know, because I've always been a really athletic girl, right? So bikini was always out of the question for me, because I just have never been that look. So for me, it was very easy to know where I fit quite quickly. For others, until they've got that understanding of things, it's actually more like, well, do you have a more thick shape with like that curvy nature, or are you quite more up and down, or have you got really good backside? You know what I mean? It's like, where are you like coming from?
You know, how long you've been training for?
Totally, and that as well, yeah. So I think the people, what I'm trying to say in that one is that you have more understanding of yourself than you know, and just look at your shape, look in the mirror and look at your shape, and and then think like, well, what do I want that to look like? If I'm going to start this challenge, what do I want to look like? And look at maybe the posing and some of the girls online, or if you can get to a show, etc., all of that. And then you'll feel a little bit more comfortable that you are going into the right place and feel more confident in your decision to take on the challenge.
Yeah, which is essentially what you've done, isn't it, Sophie? You're so motivated by figure. It's not rare of us to have a FaceTime and Sophie be like, have you seen this lady? Have you seen this? And, you know, she's so inspired by, you know, when Olympia was on and different things like that. And you can see these physiques. You know, I see your physique, Steff, and I think phenomenal, you know, like, oh,
yeah, crazy.
Oh, thank you.
But it's not my, you know, that's not
Yeah.
my, and I'm bikini, and that's, you know, that's.
But I'm the same with you, Sarah. I look at you and I'm like, oh my god, she looks absolutely phenomenal. But we're different categories, eh? And it's just that's the whole essence of this. Is that's exactly what this is all about. Some girls are going to fit that category better than another category. I couldn't imagine you, Sarah, being like a big figure. I just couldn't imagine it at all.
Whereas, like, you get, both of you have got that frame, and straight away with Soph, when we met and she competed, and then straight after, you literally like, I want to do figure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think have a go at the poses as well. I think that can quite easily put you into like a category, because if you have a go at bikini poses and you're just like, you know, I don't suit this at all, then you can maybe think, okay, well, if I give myself a little bit more time, then maybe I could do figure. I think having a go at poses and looking at yourself when you're posed makes such a big difference, and whether you feel comfortable in them poses or not.
Yeah.
Totally agree with that. Totally agree with it, because some of it comes down to the nature of your personality as well. Like I've had some females in the studio and we'll try out both bikini and figure posing. And I remember one very vividly. She was quite like a kind of a tomboy, if you know what I mean. And she was just straight away when she went into the bikini poses, she was like, nah, this is not me at all. It does not work. And she just didn't, even though she went into the pose and actually looked quite nice in it, for her, it just didn't fit. It didn't work for her. She didn't feel connected to it. So yeah, I completely agree with that. It's got to be down to sort of what you feel. And if it feels like you know, then you're onto a winner with it, really, normally.
Have you started trying figure posing, Soph?
I have, but it's so hard. And it's been so hard because I've been just so lazy with it, just from just being busy with other life, that I tried the other day to try and get into some poses, and I could hold it for like 5 seconds maximum. So hard. So definitely practicing as well in your off season is something that I definitely want to start improving on.
I think that's a
Because at the end of the day, if you can't showcase your physique well on stage, I think that's what lets the majority of people down on stage, is their posing. Because if you've got an amazing physique but you can't showcase it well, then, you know, if somebody can walk on and have really amazing stage presence, like Sarah's stage presence, like when we were on stage together, I was literally like, I was just staring at her, like mainly looking at her like, what the hell do I do next? But I was like, wow, her stage presence is incredible. She was like floating around the stage. Like, and I think that really draws attention to you if you have this like solid posing and you know your poses really, really well, and it makes you look confident even if you're not confident. Like, I practiced posing so much, I was not confident at all, but I knew exactly what poses I needed to get into, and I think that helped massively. So if you can just keep practicing and making sure that you've got that solidly, then even if you don't have the best physique in the room, if you're confident in your poses, then you can kind of pull it off, really.
Oh yeah, we said that last week, didn't we, Steff? Like, it's not necessarily when you watch a show and you sometimes think she's definitely going to win on condition, and then someone comes on that's not as conditioned, but the stage presence is on point. It's well, 9 times out of 10, it's the one with the stage presence that actually comes through, especially with bikini.
Definitely with bikini.
Yeah, you know, you might have 30 girls there, and what's going to make you stand? You've all got a nice tiny waist, you've all got nice glutes, etc., etc. what's going to make you stand out. Whereas figure, it's a very different, isn't it? It's more based on your own individual performance per se.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I mean, the posing now more than ever is essential for you to eke those extra points out on the scorecards in the symmetry round, the muscularity round, you know, if you're talking figure, or just, you know, obviously the quarter turns with bikini and the walk, etc. I completely agree with that, though. In bikini, it is very much, there is an aesthetic side to it, stage presence, that whole like drawing in, as well as all
the
having
package.
the package is everything. In figure, and then going on to the more muscular classes, yeah, it's hiding weaknesses and pushing those strengths out as much as you can to get the angles and the proportions looking bang on. And then if you can get that extra flair with classy posing that draws the attention in, that's going to give you that extra edge for sure, or at least it will make the judges hold their gaze on you a bit longer to assess your dimensions, because that's what you want. And then of course, yeah, the judging's then based on the 3 rounds, and it goes from there.
Yeah, it's just been awesome, hasn't it, to be able to talk through this sort of stuff, because I really wish that when I first started competing that there was things like this available, just, you know, literally bouncing off those questions that we've spoken about today. We've spoken about so much. Those questions are legitimately there when you first start out, and even, you know, when you come off the back of a show. And my first few shows where I didn't even, you know, have a chance in getting to top 6, which I always wanted, after a show I'd be so lost and not understand what to do. And that's with a coach as well. You know, I'd still be in that mindset of, what should I be punishing myself? I haven't done good enough. And like our collaboration, Steff, just trying to, I guess, get things out in the open for competitors, and whether it's first time or whether you've done this before, and getting Sophie here today, it's just giving that insight into what it feels like to be at that point where it's, what's next for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's such a good way to be able to just air questions for people, and like we've said, anyone that has any questions and topics for us. So today focusing on the posing and what different categories there are, but also what it looks like to go from bikini to figure. There's so many other things we can go into that we're completely open, aren't we?
Yeah, anything and everything. Just, you know, I think what's nice about these as well is we want them to be as relatable as possible. You know, it's really easy to talk about all the glamorous side of things, but actually, you know, there's just so much that goes on in this industry, and how you get to stage, and, you know, the ups and downs of everything. That the whole reason why we started it, wasn't it, Sarah, was just to sort of break those down and give females more of a voice, because you don't hear a lot. You don't have a lot of competitors talk about everything from top to bottom in a real sense that isn't just about like the good stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and like with Soph coming in as like a third set of eyes, mentioning stuff that we haven't even touched on yet, because
really, really good stuff there for sure.
Especially that sort of social media presence and what people are striving for, potentially not being what they should maybe be focusing on. Thank you so much for your time, Soph, because it's,
I thank you.
Just awesome to be able to talk, like, this is our world, isn't it? And like we said in COVID talk, like, at the moment we're bodybuilders in 4 walls.
Literally.
With bits.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's awesome. And it's really nice as well, because I think so many people will be in a similar place to you, Sophie, where they're transitioning from bikini to figure. I've seen quite a lot of people. I've got a few clients in the same place. So that transition, it changes a lot of things around your food, your diet, your training, you know, your off season, etc., all of those things. So I think that's a really interesting, there's a lot of really good gold nuggets that you've said today that I think will relate to those people. So
100%. So where can people find you on Instagram if people want to watch your journey?
Just at Coach by Soph.
Coach by Soph. And then Steff, as always, people can reach out to us via the gram, or we will upload these to continue to do this through YouTube. So any topic ideas, any questions, feel free to reach out. So on Instagram, I'm Sarah Parker-Hatchard. So feel free to zip me a message about anything. And Steff?
On Instagram, Steff Noble Figure Pro. You'll find me on there, or Pro Prep Coaching.
Awesome. So thanks again, ladies.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure,
Been
as always.
awesome.
Yeah.
I look forward to next time.
Awesome. See you soon.
See you soon.